Hi, welcome back. And I wanted to spend a few minutes to talk to you about guitar strings because I'm getting a lot of emails and there's some confusion out about the types, the kinds, what do I get, how often should I change them. There's different brands, there's different sizes, and I'm confused. Can you help me? Yes, we can, because that's what we do here at nextlevelguitar.com. Okay. We're not going to talk about changing the strings as far as physically. That's going to be in another module where I'm going to show you how to change the strings and care and maintenance of the guitar. We're going to talk about the actual strings because before you can change them, you have to go get some, right? You have to have them to change them. So, okay, there's two different types of guitar strings. Obviously, there's your acoustic guitar strings and your electric guitar strings. So obviously, if you play acoustic guitar and you have an acoustic, you're going to get acoustic strings. And electric, you're going to have electric strings, right? So let's about acoustic strings for a second, okay? I have a pack here. The way most acoustic strings are categorized is like this is medium gauge. Gauge means the thickness of the string. Usually with acoustic it's light, medium, and heavy. I'm breaking it down, making it real simple for you. The thicker the string gauge, the little bit harder it is going to be to play, but the thicker the tone, okay? My guitars, personally, and this is just me, again, I keep saying that, you know, guitar is very subjective. What sounds good that I like, as far as tone, someone might not like, someone else might like a different tone. They might like it more on the treble-y side. I like it a little bit more on the bassy side. So you got to experiment, see what you like. Remember what I said, like when using a pick. Everything that touches the guitar strings or your hand or your fingers or the thickness of the pick or the types of string affects the tone. Okay? And that's what we're really talking about, is the tone of the instrument. That's what I think is the most important thing. The tone, how does it sound, right? So, thicker strings generally, because they're thicker, they're going to be harder to press down, a little harder to play. I use very heavy string gauge on my electric guitars because I like a real thick, meaty tone. But that's just me. Some guys use real light gauge because they like to have that real fast feel and very easy to bend strings. That's the other thing when you get into string bending. The thicker the string, the more strength you're going to need to bend them. It's like trying to bend a piano wire versus bending a little thin something, right? The thicker they are, the harder it's going to be to bend them. That's all things you'll want to take into consideration, right? So on acoustic, what I always say is, you know, I like sticking with the name brands. You know, the knockoff brands or the real cheap ones, again, you know, I feel a big philosophy that I have, especially when it comes to instruments and accessories and gear and most things in life, basically, you get what you pay for. So if you buy a $2 pair of string, a $2 set of strings, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't last very long. Okay, all right. So I like sticking with the name brands, the big brands. You know, Fender, Martin, acoustic guitar strings. You know, Martin, Gibson, Fender, Dean Markley, Diodero, GHS. You know, the big names have been making them a long time. They have it dialed in really well. Some people prefer a certain brand to others. Again, I don't necessarily think one is so much better than the other. It's just a matter of how it feels to you, the feel you like. So try a few different ones, right? So on your acoustic strings, I have a pack of medium gauge, because on my acoustic I like medium strings. These are a pack of Martins, which are fine. But again, any name brand will do. And when you open them up, the acoustic strings are usually in, they don't individually, in many instances, they don't individually pack them. You'll have like 3 little packages inside. And it says, on each pack, it'll say, you know, the 3rd string, which is the G string, and the 6th string, which is the E. And then these numbers in thousandths are the gauge, or the thickness. Like this the E is 0.056, 56 thousandths. It gives you the metric equivalent if you want millimeters, right? Same thing on the G string. So you have 2 strings in here. You have a brand new low E and a G. And then this one, they put the 1st string, the E, the high E string, 13, and the 4th string, the D. And then this one is the 2nd and the 5th string. So there's all your 6 strings. And then you would go about and follow our module for changing them. Okay? How often do you change your strings? Well, and I'm going to talk about the electric strings in a minute. Dropped one. How often do I change strings? That's a question I get asked all the time. Again, I don't have a canned answer for that. It depends on a lot of variables. And I'll share with you some of the variables, right? First of all, how often do you play? If you're using your guitar all the time, playing a lot, well then you're probably going to have to change your strings more often. How much do your hands sweat? Believe it or not, what happens is the oils and the sweat and the salts from your hands get transferred to the guitar strings, okay? If your hands are sweating a lot and you have a lot of sweaty hands, you're going to want to wipe down the guitar strings every time you play, and that'll help the strings last longer, right? Quick story, I used to know a guy, played in a band, and he just a big guy, and his hands would be really sweaty, and he used to have to change his strings all the time because, well, he was playing out a lot too, so his instruments were getting lots and lots of use. I change my strings a lot because I play out a lot, and plus, I don't want to break one when I'm playing live. That's really annoying. In the middle of a song, if I bust a string, then a lot of times, because my string gauges are very heavy, it knocks my whole guitar out of tune. I got to put it down, grab another one. So I change my strings a lot. Plus, I like the sound of new strings. If you're playing your guitar a while, what happens is the strings are going to, whether it's electric or acoustic, are going to start to deaden. They're not going to sound as bright and as fresh. Okay? You put a new set of strings on there and hit them the first time, it'll be like zing, and you'll be like, whoa, so much louder and crisper and brighter. And that's the sound I like. So I tend to change my strings a lot. Yes, it gets, it's more expensive that way, but I hate the sound of dead strings. The other thing is, as your strings get more and more dead, they're not going to stay in tune as well. Okay? So you're going to want to change your strings depending on how much you play. If you're playing every day, or every other day, probably, every month, a couple months, you might want to change them. Maybe sooner if you like the real bright sound, a couple months. If you break one, you might as well just change them all, because the other one's probably going to break. Let's just break one after the other after the other. So how long they'll last depends on a lot of factors. The initial quality of the string, obviously, how often you're playing, how much your hands sweat. If you wipe down the strings afterwards, they'll last a little bit longer, right? Okay, so, but buy a name brand string, and usually if you go to a music store, they'll have deals. If you buy 3 or 4 packs at a time, or 2 or 3 packs, they'll give you a little bit of a break. Just be careful that you don't buy like 12 packs of strings and then they're lying in your house for a year or two. You know what I mean? Because sometimes just the shelf life on them, they won't sound as bright. Okay, so you want to kind of keep them fresh. Rotate your strings like a good carton of milk at the local grocery store, right? They always pull the new ones to the old ones. They want you to buy the old ones first, right? Dig in the back at the new one. Yeah, I know the tricks to get the good milk, right? Okay, so electric guitar strings. I have a couple of different packs here. I like, personally, Dean Markley strings on my electric. I've always used them. They've always just worked for me. But the string gauges are a little bit different than acoustic as far as this. Yes, it's still kind of like a light, medium, heavy, but more it goes by the number. Like usually light gauge strings, everyone calls them 9s or 9,000, 0.009. You could just go to any music store if you like 9 gauge string and say, give me a set of 9s, and they'll give you one. That's what that means. That's the high E string, 9,000s, and that's usually a light gauge. They're all usually in that realm, 9, and then they go up in the increments, thicker as you go. Obviously, the low E to the high. 10s are the next bump up. That's generally more light to medium. 11s, now you get more medium to heavy, and then 12s, jazz, real thick strings. I like heavy strings. I use 11s, and I use a thick set of 11s. 11s all the way up to 56 on the low E string, because I just like that meaty tone. So I use really thick strings. I have big hands too, and sometimes when people try to play my guitars, they don't like the way they play because my strings are so thick and the action's a little higher. But I like it that way. Again, see, it's a subjective, what you like. That's the thing about music and instruments. Find what you like, what turns you on, what sounds best to you, right? So for electric strings, I like the 11 to 56 or 52. This is 11 to 52. And usually with electric strings, they're going to come packed individually. If I can get them out of the box here. Yeah, so you see you'll have 6 different ones. I think Dean Markley gives you a nice decal too. You can put on your guitar case. You're like a rock star, right? Well, they ripped me off. I don't have one. Oh, here it is. It was hiding behind this. See? Give you a nice little decal. You can put that on your guitar case or wherever. Anywho, you can see each one is individually packaged, each string, and marked. And it gives you the string gauge right on it. Like this is the .30. Here's my high E, 11.011. 11, that's 11 thousandths, that's the string gauge. So again, I would stick with more of a name brand than a knockoff, okay? And I like to change your strings regularly because the guitar just sounds better. You know, nice new strings, there's nothing like it. Nice and bright and full sounding. Here's another set of Blue Steel, Dean Markley. These have been cryotech processed, okay, whatever that means. Something about the molecular structure into a more reactive configuration, okay? I have no idea what that means other than this is some kind of different string made by the same company, but it has a different type of coating on it. So I'll try them, see if I like them. If I don't like them, I won't buy them again. Maybe I'll like them, who knows. I'll let you know, I'll keep you informed. Anywho, electric guitar strings. Very important as far as your string gauge. It affects your sound, your tone, and playability. Acoustic guitar, you're going to be playing more chords, you know, for the most part. And strumming electric, if you're a lead player, you're going to be doing a lot of, you know, runs and bends. So you really want your guitar to play how and set up to feel how you like it. And a lot of that has to deal with the string gauge, okay? So, change your strings regularly, get the name brand, find the gauge that you like. One other thing that's really, really important that most people forget to tell you this, and this is critical. If you change the gauge of your strings, if you bump up a notch, like if you go from a set of 9s to a set of 11s, which is a big jump, you're going to have to reset up your guitar as far as the adjustments. Let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. Okay, on an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar, remember, these strings are wound tight, so there's a lot of tension pulling on the neck of the instrument, which is constantly, the neck is constantly wanting to do this, or bow, but you have a truss rod, most guitars, a metal rod that runs through the neck that keeps it straight. Now that neck is, that rod in most guitars is adjustable, okay? If you go from a light set of strings to a real heavy gauge set of strings, it's going to pull that neck a lot heavier because those heavy gauge strings are putting a lot more tension on the neck. So what's it going to do? The neck might bow a little bit. So you're going to have to adjust the truss rod or have it adjusted by a qualified service technician to pull it back straight again. As well as you might have to adjust the bridge adjustment if your guitar has either a floating or a tremolo type of bridge, then you're going to have to adjust that bridge because the new thicker strings are going to pull it up. You're going to have to adjust it to pull it back down. The action might have to get adjusted too. So basically that's called a guitar setup. Setting it up to play, go through the adjustments and restringing it for you to play it the way that you like it. But when you do move up a notch in string gauge, whether it's on the electric or the acoustic, many instances, most of the time, it's going to throw the adjustments off on the guitar. We're going to be going over those adjustments in detail, but just know that. So that's why it's important that you know what gauge strings is on your guitar, so when you go get them replaced, and because the guy's going to ask you at the music store, well, what gauge do you want? And if you're like, just give me anything. And then he gives you a set of 11s, right? You go home, there's 9s on there, you put the 11s on, you go to play your guitar, you're like, oh my God, this feels different. Why is the bridge so much higher? And I don't get it. Because you jumped up in string gauge. Or you went down in string gauge, okay? So that's important to remember, okay? We'll be getting into that in greater depth, but I just wanted to give you this little primer, this little string primer, just in case you have to run out and get some strings, because you're going to break strings. It's going to happen, I'm telling you right now. You'll be playing one time and pop! You'll be like, what the hell was that? First time it happened, you'll be like, gee, broke a string, right? It's going to happen. So we'll see you in the next module. And remember, take care of your guitar, take care of your strings. If your hands swell out, make sure to wipe down the strings with like a rag, a cloth. And we'll get into more modules on maintenance, setup, and care for the guitar later. Rock on.